Hello, it's me, and I'm going to make good on a promise that I made to a viewer. He contacted me, and you've seen this in a previous unboxing, about a puzzle that he actually made. He took a 5 by 5 by 5 and chopped it down to make a 4 by 5 by 5. It's not just a 4 by 5 by 5, it's fully functional, everything moves. However, when you make one of these turns, you see that it's off center. So this is actually a 4 by 5 by 5 off center, much like the 3 by 5 by 5 iCube, which is really just a 3 by 4 by 4 off center, which means you got this little extension hanging out here, and I did go through a tutorial on how to solve that. So when first confronted with this, at first I was thinking, well, I'll solve it much like that, but it turns out to be a little bit more challenging than that. So to those who have this puzzle, or those who have designed or can make this puzzle, and I would highly recommend, if you're able to do it and have the skills, go ahead and do it. It's a fascinating puzzle, and it's a pretty challenging solve. Then this will be a tutorial on how to do that. To those who don't have this puzzle, but would like to see how to approach a novel puzzle, maybe a puzzle you've not seen before, how to use known techniques and known structures, this could be useful as to how to approach something that you've not seen before, but utilize strategies that you have seen before. So, how would I go about solving something like this? One thing to notice is it scrambles in every direction. It can rotate by 90 degrees in all directions. So when looking at this, we see that it's a cuboid, so the thinking is that, well, I'm going to use cuboid strategy. But I can't use the same type of cuboid strategy as I would with this guy over here. This is a 4 by 5 by 5 cuboid, but it's proportional. It obeys all the laws of what you'd expect a cuboid to obey. This is the type called a domino. So with the domino, its base puzzle is a 2 by 3 by 3. Or what we can say, even though this puzzle is derivative of this was chopped down to make one of these guys, we'll say that the base puzzle is a 5 by 5 by 2. And now as a 5 by 5 by 2, notice that you have a center here. If you make a 90-degree turn in this direction, the center runs into the edges over here, so you can't turn. So you can only make 180-degree turns in this plane, but this plane you can do 90-degree turns because corners fill corner spaces and edges and centers fill edges and center spaces, so there's no problems with that. So because of that, there's no shape shifting involved per se with this, and there's no shape shifting with this. Also notice that one side only scrambles with another side, and as you build extensions on this, all dominoes are is you keep building extensions and layers top and bottom, but this layer only scrambles with this layer, and this layer only scrambles with this layer. So that makes the solve among the more straightforward of all the cuboids, which is in this case the domino variety. Now this is in stark contrast to those that have as their baseline not a cuboid, not a domino where you're just building on top of that, but as the base an n by n by n puzzle, in this case a 5 by 5 by 5. Now with the n by n by n, you're going to find that when you do 90-degree turns in any direction, centers will just occupy spaces of other centers. Edges occupy spaces of edges, and corners by corners. What that means is that no matter where I turn, no matter what 90-degree direction I go, I'm always going to be able to make another turn. So I can turn 90 degrees in all directions, as opposed to the baseline of a domino where you have centers sometimes running into edges. So you can't make 90-degree turns after that. So examples of cuboids that are derivative of n by n's as their center puzzle are going to be things like, well, in this case, the 5 by 5 by 7. 5 by 5 by 7, because the base puzzle is an n by n, it can also turn 90 degrees in all directions as well. All you're doing is you're taking a 5 by 5 by 5 and putting on extensions on the top and the bottom. But you're still solving the bottom as a 5 by 5, and then you can take two layers, either these two or perhaps these two if you want to roll these in as your base 5 by 5, and solve those like dominoes. But this will only scramble with this if you solve it as a cube. So that's how you reduce it. You're ultimately doing that reductive strategy. Other puzzles that take the form of an n by n as the base puzzle. In addition to the shapeshifters, this would be a shapeshifter, there's also the floppies. So here's an example of a 3 by 5 by 5. It has the form of a floppy, which means that the base puzzle is also an n by n, which means we can turn 90 degrees and shapeshift 90 degrees, turn 90 degrees in all directions and shapeshift like that. So what does this mean? Well, this means that when you start off with a domino, you do domino techniques. You solve it as a domino, which is basically center swaps, corner swaps, edge swaps, all of that kind of thing, adjacent and opposite. But the strategy of those with an n by n by n core is going to be solving for the n by n by n first, and then taking any extra layers that you have, and then solving those as dominoes, like these guys. So in the case of a floppy, in the 3 by 5 by 5, the base puzzle is going to be a 3 by 3. It didn't start out this way. Actually, this comes from a 5 by 5. Imagine if I just chopped down one layer, I'll end up with this to get the off-center, this extending beyond that. If I chop off this and this, then I'll get my 3 by 5 by 5, which has all the structure and the function of a floppy. Any extra layers become bandaged, and what I end up with is I end up with my base puzzle, in this case, a 3 by 3. So you solve it as that, it reduces it down to the extra layers becoming floppies or becoming dominoes, and solve it as such. But the problem is the fact that you are able to turn it 90 degrees in all directions, is you're able to put pieces in almost any other area as long as it's another center. So when you reduce it down, there's the possibility of putting pieces where they're not supposed to be. So with dominoes, these layers only scramble with each other. But if I reduced it down from a floppy, or to a, well, not so much from a shapeshifter, but from a floppy, I might accidentally put, say, this piece down over here. It wouldn't happen in this situation, but that's an example of what can happen. So if you're doing that, if you're, say, putting this piece over to here, you're not supposed to scramble it that way. Or if this were larger, this piece down over here, you'd end up with what I would call the floppy parity. And the floppy parity just basically means pieces ended up in areas that you can't solve as a strict domino. So you have to take it out and do Red Bull type strategies. So with that said, I know right away that because this does shapeshift in all direction, the base puzzle must be an n by n by n, which means my first part of the strategy is going to be to solve it as an n by n by n, because I'm going to want to free things up. So I'm going to solve it as whatever n by n by n is the base puzzle that doesn't have any bandaging or blocking. What I'm then going to do after that is I have to deal with certain parities, because if this is truly going to be a 4 by 5 by 5, I might actually have layers that are in the wrong place. In other words, this centerpiece may end up over here, which in a true domino you'd never get. So that becomes something of a parity, and I'm going to have to deal with that by doing floppy parity techniques. But in addition to that, the thing that's different about this puzzle, it is an off-center puzzle. Because it's an off-center puzzle, I'm going to have an entire layer, which is this, which once I reduce it down doesn't scramble with anything. So how can I do the domino strategies of corner swaps, edge swapping, if I don't have a complementary layer to do my moves against? So I'm going to start borrowing techniques that I did with this 3 by 5 by 5 I cube, or 3 by 4 by 4 I cube, which is really just an off-center 3 by 4 by 4. I had a tutorial on that, but I'm going to be using some of those techniques. So I'm going to be borrowing from n by n techniques, simple 3 by 3 solve. I'm going to then go into floppy modality, and then finish it up with an off-center. So with that bit of explanation, we'll go ahead and scramble this. What I'm going to do is just kind of to enhance the challenge as much as possible, I'm going to make a couple of 180-degree turns, move it here. That way I can continue to move this. Now notice along here, I'm able to make symmetric turns. So because of that, before I start bandaging things, I want to make sure that I have all my layers freed up here. And just continue to make turns like so. And thus. And this kind of demonstrates the motion. I gotta say, Nicholas did a really good job with this puzzle. So I'm going to keep scrambling this. Okay, now that I've turned it a couple of 180-degree turns, kind of separating out as many layers as I can, we can now start doing our actual n by n turns, which are 90-degree turns in all directions. And in some ways, the way that I'm scrambling it is going to reverse the steps in the way that I'm going to solve this. So what I'm going to do is continue this process, trying to get this all completely discombobulated, and then come back with the actual technique of solve. Abracadabra. Okay, so here we have a brand new puzzle. Much of you have probably never seen this this kind of a scramble, but it's the 4x5x5 offset, or you can consider it an L cube, or I think it's actually an I cube. Yeah, I cube. So let's go through the strategy that we've kind of laid out. So the first step is we need to free up all of our bandaged sides. So you can see that with this overhanging these areas here, there's certain pieces that are just not available to me. So I'm just not going to be able to do domino solves unless I free up every layer. So you can see that what is my base n by n by n puzzle that is able to move in 90 degrees in all directions. So you can see that I've got this side over here. We've got aspects of two different layers that are bandaged together. So this is one, then I have another layer here. So I've got this, then I've got this, and then this over here represents another layer where I've got two that are kind of bandaged together like that. So I've got 1, 2, 3. So basically I've got 3 deep. I've got this 1, 2, and 3 over here. So basically what I have is a 3x3. These are the only layers that are consistently available to me to move in every direction. Every so often I might free up one layer, but for the most part it's just 3 layers deep and 3 layers down basically that I have. So I've got a 3x3. So to start the process of freeing up layers, I'm going to solve it as a 3x3. So what I would suggest first is using the base layer, say the white layer, since this is going to be the extended layer anyway. So first step in beginner's method, I'm going to go ahead and put my edges in, all my white edges. So here's a white and red. Now where's my center? Well, my center is going to be, say, over here. I can tell it's the center because it's in the center of where my yellow layer is. So here's the red. So let's move this away, down to match this over here, and up. When I'm doing my n by n solve, in this case my 3x3, I'm always defining it based on the terminal areas, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So here's the white and orange. So bring it up here. Again, just simple beginner's method. So this is in, I've got this in. Now let's see what else. So you can see all of my edges are in. They're in where they need to be. So I do corners. So where are my white corners? Here's a white, green, and orange. So I'm just going to stick this where it's supposed to be. Now I don't think that this was the part that the viewer had problems with, but that's going to come soon. So I've got this over here. I've got white, blue, and red. Very patriotic, red, white, and blue. And bring it in over here. So now I've got white, orange, and blue. Just to the side here, turn, turn. So simple 3x3 solve. Last corner, right over here, turn, turn, and turn. Okay, so this would be equivalent to a 3x3 side where my corners and edges are all in, and you might find ourselves starting to free up some layers, but not quite yet. So now I'm going to do my middle layer, which cuts across here. Turn it upside down and do the simple algorithm to take this and move it here, or this and move it here. So I'm going to find all of my edges that aren't like this. They don't belong. So there's this one over here. Match this up with a green, and then I'm going to take this, move it down to this side here with my UIRI, UIFI, UF. So now this is here. So far, so good. This doesn't belong. Take it here, move it down here. Turn, 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 turn. And this is just kind of whetting our appetite, getting ourselves in the mood. This is in... Now this is in the right layer, but it's not in the right place. So you may say, well, so what? Well, it's going to help with the symmetry of the puzzle later on. It's going to be better to put it in the correct place. So this belongs down here. Turn, 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 and turn. Very nice mod, by the way. Very well turning. This is now going to come here for our last one. Now the reason that I do it this way is because once I put this in, I won't have any parity of edges. So you see 2 down and 2 up. All these are in, all these are where they need to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these and I'm going to orient them appropriately. So I'm going to hold it over here. I've got my L formation here, and we'll do F, R, U, R, I, U, I, F, I. That gives me the line. Again, F, R, U, R, I, U, I, F, I. Puts it all up. This is matched here, this is not matched, this is not matched. So I'm just going to click this over by 1, matched, matched, and not. So put the 2 that are in to the right and to the back and do R, U, R, I, U, R, to U, R, I. Then a quick slice over here will get all of my edges. Corners, which corners are in? Not this, and not this. So none of them. So I'm just going to do my corner permutation algorithm to slice them around. This is now correct. So I'm going to hold this over here and permute them around until I get at least one more that's in. Being an odd layered puzzle, doing a 3x3 solve, there will be no parity with this. So you can see this is correct. All the rest must be correct. I'm just going to do RI, DI, RD. And this is generally the last and final step of a beginner's method and the last step of conquering an actual 3x3. Turn, 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 and turn. Okay, so let's take stock in what we have. We have our 3x3 solve is done. So you can see all my corners are in here, edges are in here, and corners are here in here as well. Okay, so we're going to pick it up from here. We've just finished our 3x3 solve, which means that we have our corners here, and then we have our edges here as well as our center. And now the key is we're going to try to move all of these edges here up to the proper place. You're going to see some of them are going to be in this side over here, some of them are going to be here. In order to move these up, the reason that we're doing that is we're going to try to free up all the other sides. Having done our 3x3 solve, you can see that some sides are freed up, some terminal sides like this one over here, this one not so much, this one not at all, and this one not at all either. So we just have this over here. So here's the general strategy that we're going to be using. As much as we can, we're going to try to drive these up here, and after doing that, we're going to try to make it to where they're down flat and not up. And we're going to do that by using Red Bull algorithms. I don't have specific algorithms to do that. It's really just a matter of strategy. So when you see something that's at the side, I want to move it up here somehow. And the only way that I'm going to do that is if I take the side that this is buried into, move it up here, and then I can move it across over here. So that takes it out. So that's going to be the general strategy that I'm going to do. What I actually want to do is I want to take this and substitute it for one of these guys over here. What you're also going to want to do is you're going to take these and try to move them opposite. So take one of the yellow flat sides, move it opposite to another one so that you have two, and then you can move it up. So let's see how we're going to do this. For this one, I'll just move this up over here so that I put this directly opposite another one over here. So just to reiterate, because you're going to see the strategy coming often, is that when you see it on this side over here, move it up towards just across from another one. If you can put it in line with one that's not correct, that would be nice, because we're going to take that out. But move it up over here so this yellow one is directly across from another yellow one. Bump it out of the way. Make sure this is freely moved. Now we're going to move this back down again. And now we just have yet to just move it up like so. So in so doing, we took it down here and put it up here. So far, I can't do any Red Bulls because I can't free this up. It's kind of bandaged by this. So see, this one is down here. And let's see what I can do with this. Okay, what if I were to take this and try to move it into place over here? So bring it up, bump it down, move this down, and bring it back. Okay, so now I've got these over here. Okay, what I'm going to try to do is Red Bull these down. I need to have this freed up. This is over here, kind of stuck. So let's move this to the side. Now this is freed up, and this is freed up. Now that they're both freed up, I'm going to take that opportunity and Red Bull these guys down. So this will come down over here, this will come down over here. They'll also swap. So that's going to be 2R, 2B, 2U, L, 2 up, RI, 2 up, R, 2 up, 2F, R, 2F, Li, 2B, 2R. So we got this down, and believe it or not, that helps because it does free up another layer. The more layers I have freed up, the easier this is going to become. And I still have this one. Now notice when I was putting this up to these sides over here, I was kind of putting another one down here, but it helped reconfigure things. So what if I were to take this and try to move it over here? So I can move this up like so, bump it out of the way, as these two are just opposite each other, move this back down, and then bring it down. So now I've got these two over here. Do I have any at the side? I do. This is pretty freed up over here. Move this up here, turn, and move this back. All right, so now I've put this at the bottom. After putting it at the bottom, I can now double turn it, and that moves it into here. So just keep playing with it. Those are various techniques that you can use. This is up here. I've got these two over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to red bolt these two down. 2R, 2B, 2U, L, 2 up, RI, 2 up, R, 2 up, 2F, R, 2F, Li, 2B, 2R. Okay, these are down. Now I've got these two over here. What I want to do now is I've got these two. I want to replace them with these two. So what I want to do is if I can move this right across from here, I can then take these two, and then slide it into this position. Well, what I can do is I can take these corners, do a corner swap to move this edge right across from here. So I can move this edge to here, and then that'll do what I want to do. So I'm going to do a corner swap to put this here and this here, which will line this edge with this edge right across from each other. It's going to take me out of my 3x3 solve, but that's okay for now. So moving these together, 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, UI, D, 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R, and move it back if you want. So why did I do that? Well, I did that because now these are lined up, so I can easily take this and go splat. And there you have it. So now this is here. Now we did take our 3x3 solve out, which doesn't really matter so much, but if you're skittish and for the sake of keeping things whole, we can go ahead and move this back. 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, UI, D, 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R. Okay. So no worries. We got our 3x3 solve back. Well, not quite. I did the wrong one, so this can come here if we want to. 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, turn, turn. Okay. We'll pretend that happened better. So anyway, if you do it right, even if it doesn't work exactly that way, I've still maintained my 3x3 solve, but I managed to put these up. So just kind of play with that. It's actually a fun part because you can kind of experiment around with it. But basically, if these are down here, just keep moving them up. If they're pointed wrong, if they're flipped wrong, red bolt them to get them down. If you find them here, just move it up, put it in, move it down, and then bring it back. From time to time, you might accidentally put another one over here, but bit by bit, you'll get them up here, orient them right, and then you can red bolt to bring them down. So now that you've done this, we're going to proceed with a layer by layer solve. So we finished our 3x3 solve. We finished our reductive process by getting these edges up. Now we do layer by layer. I'd start off with this layer over here, the layer that's down, or the layer that's been sliced down. First thing to do is get your centers. So I'm going to go ahead and get these guys here. They're either going to be facing perpendicular like this or parallel like this to the side. So if it's perpendicular like this, what you have to do is we're going to take this, move it into place over here so that I'm creating this middle wedge. I'm going to bump this out of the way. Now with this middle wedge, you're going to have to do a 2M move to bring it down. You can't just move it down like this. You've got to do it 2M or else it's going to block itself. I'm then going to move this back, and I'll just move this plane back into where it came from. Here, bump it back down here, and then do a 2M to move it back. and it comes in. So remember, if it's perpendicular to it, that's how you have to do it. Move it up, bump it out of the way, do a 2M to get it out of the way, move it back, and then just reconstitute it. That's different if it's facing parallel. If it's parallel, this is going to come to here. So now we're creating this side. Now, if you're not creating an M slice, you don't have to go 2M. So I'm going to take it out of the way and just do once. I'm just going to do a 1 RI with a middle slice here. That's all you have to do. Bring it back, move it up, bring this back here, and move it here. And that's because if you ended up bringing it in to make an M slice, you're going to bandage it when you try to bring it back down. So here's another example. So here's this over here. Because this is perpendicular, when I move it in and I move it out of the way, I got to do a 2M slice. If we're over here, I'd already put it in the middle, then moving it off to the side, I just have to do just a 1L or a 1 RI. So taking this here, move it in, bat it out of the way, I got to do a 2 over here, bring it back up. This has to do with the bandaging that happens with this puzzle. And turn. All right. Not too bad. Now these two are left. Because none of these will become middle slices, you don't have to do any 2M moves. This belongs over here, so just bring it in, bat it out of the way, take this plane, bring it down. You only have to do it to a 1 LI, or RI rather, turn it back up, bring it here, and turn, and just like magic, that's in. Now, where's the next one? Right here. So, turn, turn. This is the easy part. This is the fun part. No problems. Okay. So we have it back to the native shape, which is good because now all layers are available to me. As all layers are available to me, what I want to do now is continue my layer by layer solve.